Hello, Rose, and today we're going to be talking about certainty deterrence and ideology preservation, exploring uncertainty by Ludwig Wittgenstein. This is also featured in The Map is Indestructible, Book 2 of the True Isn't the Rational trilogy. And we learn in Uncertainty by O.G. Rose in The Conflict of Mind that certainty is mostly impossible. So what are we talking about? Well, it might be that certainty isn't so much a term that describes the likelihood that an idea is right, but instead the term might have more to do with how much we need an idea to be right to hold our world together. What we are certain in might have less to do with what we are confident in as it does with that which is too central to be false. Now, again, when we're talking about certainty here, it's critical to note that certainty doesn't really exist. So what exactly are we doing when we talk about certainty then? Why are people certain about X instead of Y? Even though, if you ask people directly, most people would say that certainty is mostly impossible. I don't think that's a controversial claim at this point in history. And yet, practically speaking, most people are practically certain about a whole lot. And that's kind of a key idea. Most people, if asked directly if they're certain of things, will say no, but how do they practically live? And most of us are practically certain about certain ideas because we get defensive about them, we avoid talking about them, we don't, why talk about them if they're true, right? There's nothing to talk about. And so there's a kind of avoidance that takes place. So what is going on? In this paper will suggest that maybe what we're certain about is that which is kind of like too valuable to be false. It's almost like a deterrence, like nuclear deterrence. In the Cold War, there was a way in which nations were protected by nuclear deterrence because the cost of war was so high. Likewise, some ideas might be so central that if they are wrong, our entire identity, view of the world, all these things will collapse. So we become certain about them. It's a kind of deterrence. It's ideological deterrence. It's a way to preserve ideology. Now, to help explain, because to see how this could work, we need to understand that beliefs are all interconnected. Because if we don't understand that, if we think beliefs are separate, it's not really possible for a single belief to tear everything down, right? So if we have to understand how beliefs are always networks of beliefs, otherwise understanding certainty as a deterrence structure won't make much sense. Wittgenstein's incredible book on certainty is going to be a reply to the G.E. Moore notion of here's a hand argument, where he says here's a hand, and it's a defense of common sense. And Wittgenstein points out that, when we say we know this is a hand, it's because of that belief. He points out, he has the insight where if that belief was false, then the entire belief in the external world would be false. And this is the idea. When we ask the question, is my hand really here? We're not just asking about the hand. We have to also at the same time ask about the entire world and our entire understanding of reality. My hand cannot not be here without reality not really being here or being radically different from what I think it is. And so you can't ask an isolated question. Likewise, if I ask, how do I know anything exists? Well, that is going to change your relation to everything in existence and to yourself, right? You can't just ask an isolated question without it setting off a chain reaction regarding all beliefs and all relations to everything in the world. So the first thing that Wittgenstein really wants to draw attention to is that beliefs exist in networks. He also notes that we kind of believe more without being able to say how. Yeah, of course, my hand is here. When it comes to the belief, Wittgenstein points out, my body has never disappeared and reappeared again after an interval. We just kind of believe that. But how? And what we see, it's almost like we believe it because if it wasn't true, nothing could be true, or everything would be different. The belief has to be held because it exists in a network of lots of beliefs, and it's almost like our beliefs gain credibility from the side, per se, not from underneath. It's like we believe in what we believe because everything fits together in a network of beliefs that all are true or false together. And so beliefs are more like networks than they are single premises. Because the point Wittgenstein also makes, and here's the other thing, these networks are they're not isolated to subjects, they're very universal. Wittgenstein points out that the truths which Moore says he knows are such as, roughly speaking, all of us know if he knows them. If he knows his hand is there, we all know our hands are here, and we know the external world is there. So these beliefs that are kind of common sense are common sense. They are in common with everyone else. And it goes to show you that we all ascribe to networks of beliefs, that every belief has to be rightly situated for all the other beliefs to hold. And since the other beliefs do hold, then there's reason to think that a particular belief we may focus on also holds, like my hand existing or not. The phrase, when it comes to determining, for Wittgenstein, a phrase, when it comes to determining what is true, it is not a single judgment that is made solid to us, but always a totality of judgments. That's a phrase Wittgenstein uses. He claims that the truth of certain empirical propositions belong to our frame of reference, and likewise recognizes that the truth of certain empirical propositions is relative to the system or totality of judgments in which the propositions are located and situated within. So we're never dealing with single propositions. We're always dealing with entire maps. You could say ideologies. Like if you can't really ask or question a single belief, you have to question like many beliefs at once. And that's why philosophy always seems to have this kind of endless quality. Like you're always philosophers ask a single question and then you go on to like 50 other questions. Like it just, one thing leads to the next. And you're like, well, why is that? It's because philosophers are being difficult. No, it's because philosophy unveils that beliefs are never isolated. They're always in networks, and philosophy makes that vivid. So again, beliefs are all interconnected. If I can't know I have a hand, then I also can't know I have a foot or an ear, or I can't know that tree's over there. So it all connects in that way. But does this mean that there is no objective truth? That's not what Wittgenstein is saying. This line, he says, isn't it true or false that someone has been on the moon? Because back then no one had. If we are thinking within our system, then it is certain that no one has ever been on the moon. So the kind of idea here is he really wants to kind of point out that we can't talk about true or false without also talking about a system. If a rock were to ask one another, has anyone ever been on the moon? Then the rock would say yes, of course, because rocks are on the moon. It's a silly example, but the point is we're always dealing with a system. But there is a right and wrong within a system. The problem is that we just can't think right and wrong without also thinking a system. So all testing, all confirmation and disconfirmation of a hypothesis takes place already within a system, and systems are the element in which arguments have their life, Wittgenstein says. So what this means, funny enough, is that if all ideas are situated in a system, then what is doubt exactly? What are we doing when we doubt? Well, Wittgenstein says doubt comes after belief. This is a key point. Like, we can't doubt unless we believe in something. So there's no such thing as total doubt. There is no such thing as a doubt that is total, only partial, or it always has to ascribe to a system that is not being doubted. So, Wittgenstein says whenever we test anything, we are already presupposing something that is not tested. Likewise, when we reason anything, we are already presupposing something that is not reasoned. And obviously that speaks to the true isn't the rational distinction that's central for the trilogy. And so let's say, for example, you're questioning the existence of God. Well, there's a funny way that if you're questioning God's existence, you have to act like he exists or there's nothing there to question, right? Let's say you're asking questions about Jesus. Well, you have to operate, for those questions to be valid, you have to kind of operate in the framework as if Jesus was God. If you don't accept all those premises, then what you doubt will not be what the Christian doubts, for example. This hints at Anselm, by the way, which comes up later in the book. But what we can do is this is the issue, if you're going to leave Christianity, it's got to be like wholesale. Like you have to leave entire systems. You can't just pick and choose parts to believe because all of those are kind of situated. Yes, you can refine variables in the system, but if you're going to refine them, you have to make them fit back within the network of other premises. And you see, so like when Wittgenstein says, when we first begin to believe anything, what we believe is not a single proposition. It is a whole system of propositions, like dawns gradually over the whole. Well, the reverse can be true in the sense that when we doubt anything, if it's a true doubt, what we doubt is not a single proposition, but a whole system. But weird enough, if we're doubting the whole system, then from where do we get belief to do that doubting? It becomes very strange. What you almost have to make a distinction between is almost like doubt and leaving, or doubt and abandonment. Because if you're doubting, here's the issue. Like for ideology, if you think that doubt is like critical, which it can be in a way, of course, but it's more like refining. But if you treat doubt as overly as not really acknowledging the belief that makes doubt possible, then ideology can actually use doubt to make it seem like you're not an ideologue as you actually are an ideologue. It can control you in that way. Doubt can become in service of the ideology, not an actual critique of the ideology. So that's why doubt has to be on a systems level, or it's probably just going to be in function of ideology preservation. So really what we do is, like, you can, well, the other reason why total doubt is not possible, because let's say you're doubting Christianity, well, you have to doubt it like from another system, like let's take atheist naturalism, or just like pure naturalism where you don't believe anything spiritual. If you're leaving theism, you're probably entering the system of naturalism, right? And that's another system. So you can't escape systems at all. Like if you're going to critique one system, you need another system to fall back into. So total doubt, as in the doubt of everything all at once, is not possible, because doubt requires belief by which to make that doubt substantive and intelligible. So we're never ever truly totally doubting. So we have to be careful to think that doubt necessarily implies critique of ideology. And in fact, the funny thing is the doubt will probably receive substance from what we are certain of. And it's the thing that we're certain of that tends to be the lens point that would tear down the entire network of beliefs. So for example, in Christianity, like if Jesus was not God, then I think the network of Christianity collapses. So if you doubt parts about Christianity, say what the Sabbath is, you're going to probably do so from a place of believing that Christ was God. And the reason you're doubting the Sabbath is in order to properly relate to Jesus. So the doubt assumes the certainty, if you will. It assumes the core belief. So the doubt then is not a deep doubt. It can't be, because if it was, the doubt would not exist. So in this way, doubt is not what we think it is always. Doubt is more like a refining fire than it is a abandonment or an undermining. If we are undermining, then we are doing it from something we don't doubt, like atheism, and maybe that would be a movement to a greater truth. But the point is, we have to see doubt, even in that situation, then you're refining Christianity into the quote-unquote truth of atheism, right? Like there's still a refinement function going on. And doubt, the word doubt is kind of problematic because it's very nihilistic sounding, like I don't believe anything, I doubt. No, you always believe something. The doubt-belief dichotomy is false. There is no such thing as belief that can't be doubted, because there's no such thing as certainty, ultimately. And there's no doubt that doesn't entail belief. And so it's a false dichotomy. We have to think beyond it. We have to think about refinement. What we're doing is refining. And if we don't think that way, then we're likely to just use doubt in service of ideology preservation and certainty in service of ideology preservation, because we're stuck in a false dichotomy that we just keep moving back and forth between. The paper has more to say, but we need to think of beliefs as always systematic, never isolated, if we're going to start thinking and refining beliefs and ideas and thoughts well. For more about OG Rose, please visit ogrose.com, Twitter, Anchor, Instagram, Amazon. All purchases and reviews are greatly appreciated, and thank you so much for your time.